Johnny Mac's with us to talk a little football, NFL style, here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Johnny, welcome. I can't believe I forgot your new intro.
Oh, man, day two. You already forgot.
Well, it's I'm putting yesterday it wasn't a finished product. I aired that before it was really supposed to air, and there was a couple glitches in it that I needed to tighten up, and I forgot to do the tighten up today. So it's not really ready for air. It will be ready when we come back on Monday.
Well, that will be something everyone will look forward to, and that's, it's Carson Wentz's world.
We all just living in it. So most 75% are on our Twitter page at 973 ESPN are most thankful for Carson Wentz, which they should be. I mean, when you have the quarterback, you have your guy. I mean, the other two guys, they kind of split the vote up. You can combine those two together, and you got a nice number, 15% and 8% for the two Sixers. But this is Carson Wentz's town right now, isn't it, John?
Yeah, it is. And, hey, he deserves it. He's everything, as you mentioned. The fact it might be the most important position in sports. You could argue maybe starting pitcher on a big day. Game 7 of the World Series is more important. But I think for consistency and a standpoint, playing quarterback in the NFL is the most important position in sports. And the Eagles hit a home run, and I would have answered, though, and I said I would have answered Ben Simmons. I got to be honest. Ben Simmons, to me, has what we say. This will probably, it's not meant as an insult, but he's got Ray Charles talent. Anybody can see it. Anybody can see it. And he's going to be a top 5 player in that sport for a really long time.
With Carson Wentz, by the way, he leads all players in fan Pro Bowl voting. It doesn't seem like he's not the most talkative guy. He doesn't look for the attention. Is he the kind of guy this city will embrace? Is he the kind of guy that this city will like?
Yeah, I mean, they already do. He could be the mayor of this city. He owns this city at this point. And obviously, it's a 9-1 football team, and the best team in the NFL. If he's not the front runner for the MVP, he's right there with Tom Brady. So to be that high profile in the most popular sport, the most popular team in the city, I mean, he's already won over. He can't go any higher than he is right now, other than actually winning the Super Bowl, bringing it home for a long-suffering fan base. And I think ultimately, he's going to get one. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but he's a superstar.
It's crazy to think that you have, I talk about a lot with basketball with the two guys, and I know you and I have gone back and forth on what the basketball team did, but I said watching those two guys play every night, I would trade any reasonable level of success that the Sixers could have had over the previous 3 seasons for the chance to watch those two guys play each and every night. You don't get those two franchises wait decades to get a guy like that, let alone 2. Similar with football. Franchises wait years and years and years to land the quarterback. And it looks like right now the Eagles landed one. I mean, look at Buffalo. They can't get a guy since Jim Kelly. Cleveland hasn't had a guy since Kozar. There's a lot of franchises where you can go down the list and say they haven't found a quarterback since, and it looks like finally that since has been taken care of by this kid.
Yeah, and, I always say the people in Green Bay have been so spoiled for basically a quarter century. They've been able to do it back-to-back. That's very, very rare. And it's taken the Eagles a long time. It's different sports. We talk about it all the time. It's not sort of an apples and oranges comparison. But Howie Roseman, give him credit. He was able to do it. And this team really didn't have a drastic downturn. They're not the Cleveland Browns. They're not trying to lose on purpose to try to get in the position to finally get a player they think is going to be a superstar. The Eagles went out and evaluated, found the kid they wanted, did everything humanly possible to get up first from 13 and make the 2 trades to get all the way up to number 2 in the draft, and they wanted him, and they targeted him, and they got him, and it worked. And they didn't have a rebuilding period. Yeah, they weren't tremendous last season, but they won 7 games. You could argue if Lane Johnson didn't get suspended, they might have even been on the cusp of being a wild card team. They weren't terrible. So I think you have to give Howie Roseman a lot of credit for what he was able to do in quickly restocking this organization, not only with the quarterback, but up and down the roster from what was a disastrous final year of the Chip Kelly regime.
Hey, John, tell us a little bit about Alshon Jeffrey and this guarantee. What's this all about that I'm hearing?
Well, after last season ended, you sort of have the post-mortem in every NFL city, and Chicago was a bad football team last year, and he said, we're going to win a Super Bowl, and everyone looked at him and rolled their eyes, as they should have, because certainly Chicago was not going to win the Super Bowl, even if he came back. But he obviously left and signed with the Eagles. And that was brought up to him yesterday with the Bears coming in, and he just joked, and he said, I said we. I didn't say what team. And now he's with the 9-1 Eagles, and obviously a front runner for the Super Bowl. So Alshon kind of looking like a great prognosticator, because remember, when he signed with the Eagles, he also wrote a Y in the Players Tribune, and he basically said he thinks Carson Wentz is going to be an MVP, and that prediction's looking pretty good.
Since we're on the receiver position, Nelson Agholor didn't really exactly tear up the stat sheet. Do you have a reason why he had a down game last game? Do you expect that to continue? Were you able to connect with him at all during the week?
A little bit, not in depth. Nelson has been a little bit more, I don't want to say difficult this season, but I think coming off his first 2 years, I think he's a little more careful, and he doesn't speak as freely as he once did because of all the criticism he got. And he's been one of the most improved Eagles to this point, and he didn't have a very good game in Dallas. I talked about that earlier. He had a couple drops. It sort of looked like the rookie and sophomore Agholor versus what you've seen so far this season, and you hope it doesn't continue, but he's been a guy that when things go wrong, the confidence erodes, so that's something to keep an eye on. There's no question about it. You have to, until he proves otherwise, as I said, he's a guy who has let bad games get to him, and from there it snowballed, and you hope he solved that problem, and we'll see starting Sunday against Chicago.
Does Doug Peterson expect to have Jake Elliott back for the game against the Bears? Has Caleb Sturgis been kicking? Would he be available if he had to go?
Well, we don't know what Caleb. All Doug will say is very close. But Jake Elliott was out there practicing in a limited fashion, even though he's not out of the concussion protocol. He looks fine. I would be stunned if he's not the kicker on Sunday. So, Doug pretty much said he thinks he's going to have him. He's got to pass one more hurdle, and that's the independent neurologist has to clear him. But he was out there kicking field goals today inside the bubble, so he looks ready to go. He looked ready to go Tuesday. I don't think there's any doubt that Jake's going to be the kicker against the Bears.
You know, John, because of the way the game went in Dallas, I know that on Monday, day after, he was asked about his propensity for, did he enjoy all the 2-point conversions or would he like to go for 2 all the time? You think he'd ever consider going into a game without a kicker? I mean, he kind of touched on it a little bit today.
No, you got to ask that question today, and he completely shot it down, thankfully. Because, I mean, you need a kicker just for kicking off. Although Camus deserves, Hill deserves a ton of credit because he really did a good job in a difficult circumstance with the kickoffs. He even got 1 touchback, which is amazing. And I caught up with Chris Maragos, who's still on crutches. He was the Eagles' emergency kicker before he got hurt. And he admitted, he kicked in high school. and he admitted he probably couldn't get it to the end zone. So Camus did a better job than probably Chris would have done if he was healthy. So he deserves a tip of the cap. But no, the Eagles don't want to go into a game without having a place kicker. And I wrote about the 2-point conversions. That's sort of like a catch-22. It's great to be aggressive. But remember, when you use those plays, you're putting them all on film.
Right.
And if you need a 2-point conversion at a key point in a game, whether it's to tie a game late, it could be a playoff game, the last thing you want is everybody in the league seeing every single 2-point conversion you have. And now the Pittsburgh Steelers have been the one organization that's kind of embraced it, and they go for 2 a lot. And the analytics say, and the Eagles, all you have to do, it's simple math. The Eagles scored 4 touchdowns, and if Jake was out there and made 4 extra points, that's 4 points. They got 6, and they should have had 8. So from that standpoint, it's easy to say you should do it all the time. But, again, that doesn't take into account the one situation where you need it and you might fail because – and I used the first 2-point conversion, which I thought was a brilliant play, and that was the smoke screen to Corey Clement. Mm-hmm. Well, that's on film now. So you can't pull that out and surprise the team with it. They're going to know what you're trying to do.
Hey, how about schedule-wise, since they're coming off this big blowout win over the Cowboys, and they have Seattle next week on the road, the Bears kind of sandwiched in the middle there. Any trap thoughts?
Yeah, we've used that word a lot this year, and I think it first came up when it was against the Los Angeles Chargers, and it's been used again and again and again, and the Eagles have shown no inclination they're going to fall into a trap or a trap game and not show up. At least, I think the better term is probably human nature, because I talked to Jalen Mills about this, and when you're playing Mitchell Trubisky and it's a rookie quarterback, he's probably not ready to be out there and run an entire NFL offense. It's almost human nature to think it's going to be a little bit easier, but that doesn't mean you're going to fall into a trap over 60 minutes. And I thought the Cowboys were a perfect example of that. The Eagles didn't play well in the first half, but when you have a good team, you tend to wake up at some point, and that's what the Eagles have been able to do time and time again.
We're talking with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Check out his national column, Extra Points, on our website. By the way, PT is enjoying his Australian beef pie sent to us from the 76ers. He is wolfing that down here, John. So I know you're jealous. The Australian meat pies, Josh had one, PT had one. I'll get to mine a little bit later, but I got to continue working over here, so I'll continue talking to you. I
saw the Eagles were giving them out. The Sixers were giving them out to the media, so I'm a little jealous.
They sent us
closed circuit to Dave Schaller. I need my Australian meat.
They sent us a box of 24, so we've got it's a Thanksgiving miracle of meat pies over here. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Give me, in your mind, this is a team, we talked a little bit yesterday, this team does run the ball pretty well. John Fox is a defensive-minded guy. And when you look at this Bears team, they have the young quarterback. So obviously, that's something that they're going to struggle with. But what does concern you about Chicago? Because as the season goes on, these teams change. We saw Philadelphia last year, those last couple games. Some teams use these last couple of weeks to really springboard into next year. I don't know that Chicago's going to be that kind of team. I don't know they have the talent. But if you are Doug Peterson right now, what's concerning you about Sunday?
Well, I think it's definitely their running game and their ability to run the football. The fact that they have 2 really complementary backs that are very good. You got the big back and Jordan Howard, who can run between the tackles, and I think he's 3rd in the NFL in rushing. And then you have Tariq Cohen, who's really a Darren Sproles type, really undersized, short. I shouldn't say undersized. He's short, but he's big. He's stocky, and he can do a lot of different things as far as getting to an outside zone running game, catch the football. He's even thrown the football. He's a very versatile player. And then you talk about their offensive line and the interior specifically. It's really good. It's Cody Whitehair and Kyle Long, Chris's brother, and Josh Sitton. So they can run the football, and they're gonna run it somewhat. I think this might be the most difficult rushing attack the Eagles will face this season, and plus for the fact that they can't do much else. So even if they get behind 14-0, they're going to keep running it, and that can wear on you. So I think from that standpoint, it's going to be a good test for the Eagles' defense, which has obviously been lights out for the most part. But they showed, I don't want to say it was bad against Dallas, but they were a little upset about how much they gave up in the running game, and it's going to be much tougher this week.
Hey, John, let's look quick at the overall NFL NFC playoff picture here. You've got tomorrow Minnesota, Detroit. Now, Detroit has a chance to catch Minnesota with a victory. They can, keep the North in play, but they're one spot out of the wild card race. So give me your thoughts on the Thanksgiving feast to start off tomorrow with the lunchtime edition.
Well, the lines have been they've had the Vikings number the last couple of years, and they beat them earlier this year already in Minneapolis. So if they win that game, they're in a position to win the NFC North, even though they'd still be a game behind, because the Vikings have a really difficult schedule. They got to play Carolina on the road, Atlanta on the road. So that's a big game. Obviously, if the Vikings win, that's essentially they're going to win the NFC North, no question about it. But the Lions can keep it in play. So that's a really, really big game as far as the NFC playoff picture goes. And I think from the Eagles' perspective, obviously you're rooting for the Lions because if the Vikings stay hot, they're only a step behind the Eagles, and you start talking about home field advantage. And the Vikings are trying to become that one team to actually play the Super Bowl in their home stadium. And to have think about that, what that could be for Minnesota, to have the road to Minnesota go through Minnesota.
John, you got Dallas tomorrow as well, taking on the Chargers. I think the Chargers are interesting. They're in play in that AFC wildcard race, and they are a road favorite in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers, we talk about, they sort of invented ways to lose over the past couple seasons. Now they finally come out of it, started to win some football games, and the AFC West is not nearly as difficult as we thought it was going to be, with the Raiders and the Broncos specifically underachieving, and even the Chiefs coming back to the pack. So the Chargers have a chance to be in the wild card hunt, certainly, on the AFC side, which is not nearly as deep as the NFC side. So that's a big game, and Dallas is probably going to be healthier. I think Tyron Smith is going to get out there and at least try to play and see if he holds up. So that's a game that has a little bit more interest than I think people, if they see it on the schedule and they say that's not a big game. I think it's a little bit bigger than people think. I can't say that with the nightcap, which is probably pretty meaningless at this point.
Yeah, you got that giant Redskins game right here on 97.3. By the way, Dwight Freeney, who was released by Seattle, has been signed by the Lions. So the Lions had a little pass rushing here. He was getting to the quarterback in Seattle. And
he always does. Yeah. I'm amazed at Dwight Freeney. I mean, nobody signs him, and then somebody signs him midseason. He gets to the quarterback. For some reason, I don't know. I mean, it's almost a form of ageism because, let's face it, Dwight's old from a football perspective, but nobody has his spin move, and he still gives offensive linemen just nightmares when he brings that out. And for a league that sort of is defined by I always say you either get the quarterback or you get to the quarterback or you have no chance. And Dwight's one of those guys that he's going to be a Hall of Famer because there are very few people that have been better pass rushers in the history of this league than Dwight Freeney.
John, obviously tomorrow filled with football. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. And the shortened edition on Friday. John will be up on the earlier spot than normal on the Friday show. I'll be out on Friday. Pete and Josh will have that.
We'll take you home, John.
John will get you ready with his pick for Eagles and Bears right here on 97.3. But check out all the Eagles news and notes at 97.3ESPN.com and follow John McMullen at JFMcMullen on Twitter. Take care, pal. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the holidays and the meat pies.